Stop shaming circumcised men. This video is going to be part of my tactics series. In particular, this is a question for activism and how can we win circumcised guys over. Now, activists need to come up with a coherent strategy and a long-term goal. A lot of what they seem to be doing is inconsistent and counterproductive. I can't understand their focus on education at the expense of political action. I've also noticed that while they seem to avoid going on the offensive and seem to be increasingly avoiding confrontation, they are still willing to shame cut men. Now, this is it's a dilemma because ultimately we want to win circumcised guys over. I mean, these guys are going to be having kids. But I mean, the question of, I really see shaming them. It's obviously going to be counterproductive. But how do we break in and open up some sort of dialogue with them? Now, for movements to be successful, you need to use anger to rile up your base, and you do need shame, but you need to use shame against your opponents. And when you have those two things together, you polarize an issue, you bring it out into the open public arena for discussion, and you force people to take sides. You're basically polarizing an issue. But the thing is, it has to be done selectively. It's all about the way you frame the issue. Now, with circumcised men, I think they see the message of activism and they get defensive for obvious reasons, because there's quite literally nothing that in the message of the movement that appeals to them personally. I mean, on some level, they have to kind of accept that something wrong was done to them. That said, I do not think it is productive to tell circumcised men that they have damaged penises, or that they're damaged. Now, even if it's ultimately true, it's a horrible way to open up to them. I mean, I'm not circumcised, but I'm pretty sure that if I was, I would be very defensive. And the dilemma is that we want to win these guys over. I mean, angry young men have driven most movements, so we want to find a way to harness that energy. Gregory Malchuk's actually did an interesting video talking about foraging and how it can be kind of this escape hatch for circumcised men. It can kind of give them something like some hope or something to look, some sort of answer to the situation they face. And I found that very interesting because I think that needs to be incorporated more into activism. I mean, really, for me, activism should focus mostly on the issues of consent and ethics, because first of all, that's going to make men angry, and it's also it's a way of approaching them that doesn't demean them or attack them personally. I mean, the way this society is, it doesn't exactly look favorably upon male weakness or vulnerability. I mean, society already shames and abuses men and tells them that their sexuality is toxic. Shame is a powerful tool, but these guys, they're not our enemy. I know that they're going to be having kids, and I know, you know, we want to win them over somehow, and it's a difficult problem. It's a kind of like it's a tightrope that we have to walk. But I think that, I mean, the way I approach them, whenever I approached guys, men, circumcised men, I always mentioned the nature of circumcision. If you focus on what actually happens in the circumcision, I mean, men are going to be very squeamish about this anyway. And I think the thing is, I always tell men is, you know, be happy with your body. If you are happy with your body, that's good. But remind them that not every circumcision is the same. I mean, that I feel like is the best opener. You can always mention that there's different degrees in terms of how much skin is removed and what kind of skin. You can also, I think when you explain to them the fact, I always mention that it's easier to actually do it on an adult than a child. It's harder for the adult to recover, but with the child, the foreskin is fused to the head of the penis, and you explain to them exactly what happens in the circumcision. First of all, the men get squeamish, and second of all, you explain that the doctor has more to work with, and that it's actually a lot easier for a doctor to remove or know exactly what he is cutting off, and I think that kind of plants a seed in their head, because I mean they're gonna, you know, they'll always react defensively. Well, my dick is fine, or, you know, it's cleaner, it's healthier, da da da. But when you explain the risks involved and the complications and the deaths, you know, without attacking them personally, you're not telling them that they're damaged. In fact, you can tell them that they're lucky. They really start to think about this. They start to think about, and it starts to get into the ethics of this. I mean, are the so-called benefits worth the risks? And I think that's kind of the best approach to take. I just, you know, I know these guys are going to be they're going to be having kids, and if, you know, the best case scenario is that we win them over and to join our cause. You know, and it's the thing to really focus on is the lack of consent and the ethics, because I think that will make men angry, but it will also it sidesteps the shame. You know, I just think telling men that they are damaged is not a good opener, and I've seen that happening in activism, both on Facebook, on YouTube, and in person. And now there's a time and a place for everything. Shame needs to be used against our opponents, absolutely. And you know, in certain situations, I think it is appropriate to use, but you have to keep in mind that your average sane man, circumcised man, will react defensively. And you know, you have to approach your initial approach matters. It really makes the difference. And I don't see activists having these kinds of discussions. And I think that's why politicizing this whole debate and trying to get it into, you know, taking on issues like the law, the legality, the ethics of it is the most productive thing to do. I just think otherwise men are just gonna react negatively and feel like there's absolutely nothing in it for them. All they're hearing is a message that they're damaged. The issue of consent and ethics, it works twofold because it sidesteps the whole dilemma of men facing their own damage, and it also motivates them and compels them to take action. Young men are going to be the ones that are going to be having children. I mean, women, their partners, typically, they'll defer to the husband. They'll say, or the partner say, "Oh, I let my partner decide that he's the one with a penis." So I mean, really, you need to reach men when they're young, long before they're even thinking about having kids. If you're approaching people that are expecting it, by then it's too late. It's just too late, and the issue is just so much more relevant to men, obviously, because it affects them. So it just makes it makes more sense to just approach young men. They're going to be the ones that have the anger. They're going to be the ones that have the motivation. And I think that they could be our greatest resource, our greatest pool for recruits. And I just think that shaming them is not going to be a good way to win them over. I mean, shame has to be used. I mean, you're always going to have people, including circumcised men, that just cannot be won over. And like I said, there's a time and a place for everything. But it's got to be selective, and there's got to be planning done beforehand. There's got to be good targets. It's got to be framed in the right way. And I just think that focusing on the loss that circumcised men deal with, it's really not a motivational rallying cry. I think the best thing is to focus on the ethics and the lack of consent, and also I think the double standards that men face. And I think that there's in we're gonna have to be confrontational, but we're gonna have to be confrontational in the right way and with the right people. And this is going to be there's no way around it. Circumcision is controversial. It's going to be controversial, and we're going to make enemies no matter what. There's just no way around that, and we can't be some sort of big tent movement that just tries to make everyone our friend. It's just not going to happen. And for this reason, I just think that coming up with some sort of coherent and workable strategy, and some sort of maybe short-term goals leading up to a long-term goal, is going to be of the utmost importance. Otherwise, it's just going to be this war of attrition. Where you're trying to win over one person at a time. I do not see that as having any sort of strong impact. It's a war of attrition could take decades, and to me, I really don't think that's acceptable. So we need to find a way to win these young men over. We cannot alienate them. The truth is difficult. It's difficult for them to face. I understand this. But and that's why, this has got to be thought about beforehand. We've got to find a way to win these guys over, get them angry and motivated, and channel that anger towards something productive. And I just do not think that belittling circumcised men is going to help any sort of movement to grow. This discussion, it's not just about this in particular. There's other things that I would like to talk about too. I mean, I think that it's important for activists to start thinking strategically, not just about this. I wanted to talk about the whole shaming circumcised men, because I just think that's one particular weakness in the activist movement, or I should say that's one bad tactic I've seen. But there's other issues too, and I just think overall the lack of planning and preparation, and the kind of post hoc on the fly action, and sort of repetitive, the same old thing, just kind of holding signs and handing out information. I just do not see that as being very effective in the short or long term. I mean, if we make mistakes, if we do things like alienate circumcised men, it could actually make the activist movement shrink, or stagnate, or shrink. And remember, with the way it is with movements, they typically never just stay the same. They either grow or they shrink. They never just stick around, because people burn out and they leave. So we've always got to be looking for new recruits, and we've got to always be motivating these guys. We've got to think about not just, did we save a baby? Did we change a mind? We want to be winning disciples over. We want to win over people that are motivated, and they themselves will go out and to try to make a change. I just think bludgeoning men over, you're damaged, this is the truth. I just do not see that as some sort of effective strategy. If you have any suggestions, I'd love to hear them. We've got to think about how we win recruits over. Another thing I don't like is that, if you hand out information, someone can react positively to them, but you don't know whether they're going to follow through. So the most important thing is that we win over people who are in turn going to win over people. We want to tap into that anger. And when we have to, we will use shame against our opponents and enemies. And even circumcised men, there's a time and a place to shame them. I absolutely agree. But we just have to be selective about it. And we, at the very least, we need to be having this sort of conversation. This has to be discussed. Strategy in general and tactics have to be discussed. This has to be part of the public discourse. Anyway, that's it for this video. I don't think I left anything out. Please leave your comments and suggestions down below. I want to hear what your ideas are. And that's it. I'm going to talk more. I'm going to talk more about activism and circumcision, because I think it's probably the number one issue faced by men in the West, certainly in the United States, but to a lesser extent the West in general. Anyway, that is all. Leave your comments below. Thank you.